that might be a vote, and we're checking on it. I think that the ranking member has one final word, and then I'm going to throw out. Is the recess? Okay. All right. I'll go to the ranking member.
Thank you. Mr. Ingram, there's two different kind of consolidations we need to talk about. 1948, there was a concept that all aviation should be controlled by the Air Force. You know, Navy, Marine Corps didn't need it anymore. And because airplanes are airplanes. But the tasks for those airplanes were different. And that is why to this day, we have close support within those ground-based operations. The naval operations aren't consolidated. And so we get into that task. We even hit it now with the unmanned vehicle. The Air Force doesn't like them, but the guys on the ground love them. Let me sort of throw out to you the concept of using the outcome. Rather than literacy in a country that doesn't read the Quran because they can't translate it into their native tongue, you know, a task that I think that we ought to be looking at Afghanistan is the elimination of the opium economy and a replacement, the return to the orchards of the 1950s, 1960s that the opium economy ended up destroyed. Because let's face it, you don't worry about your orchards if you don't think you're going to be alive in the next couple, months. But that would include the use of biological herbicides and the appropriate way of using those herbicides at the destruction of the opium crop over a period of years, rather than total destruction, to where people start realizing that the Americans are killing their crops. And I'm saying, let me talk to you about this. Let's just say that the armed forces went in and wiped out the opium crop the way that some people are purporting, while our aid package is there. The children of Afghanistan is learning that Americans in their country are destroying daddy's crop, rather than seeing that the Americans in Afghanistan are helping dad plant the new orchards that are going to feed them in the future. Do you see how this isn't as simple as we might have? Because the task, I think, if we are tasked with this transformation, the military application and some of the non-aid activities have to be totally coordinated with that aspect. And I point that out. I think that's the kind of goal, not looking at literacy in itself in isolation, but the outcome of a new economy. Do you think that the coordination could be brought under a thing like the Director for Foreign Assistance working with the Department of Defense and that kind of coordinated activity? Or do you think that we need to leave some of this out of a coordinated effort like the Director of Foreign Assistance, which you were pointing out? Is that the person you were picturing as being the czar, or are you talking about creating a new czar for this oversight?
No, I wasn't thinking about creating a czar. I was thinking about putting as much of the development functions of the U.S. government in, let's say, USAID, and that with the global development strategy that cuts across the whole U.S. government and probably gets led by the NSC, AID, and the State Department. They lead the formulation of that, but it includes the military in there, and EPA and CDC and whatnot, in formulating a broad global development strategy. And then when it comes to a country like Afghanistan, and it's really under the direction of the ambassador that has to, and his appropriate senior folks in Washington, who have to drive what the U.S. foreign policy interest is in that country. And if it's the elimination of opium, then you need to put together a U.S. government-wide strategy, part of which might be the military, a large part of which might be helping with the economic and social evolution and dynamics, which would come under the rubric of USAID, but not all of that might fall under the expertise of USAID. You might have to get EPA involved in there. If there was a health component, you might have to get CDC. So it's not that you fold everything into USAID. It's that USAID is the government agency that has the expertise and knowledge for how you carry out development programs in a country, social, economic, political development, and it then reaches out to the rest of the U.S. government and pulls it in as their expertise and experience is needed.
Madam Chair, I appreciate this hearing, and I guess the challenge to the successors of Mr. Walsh, I really think, I spent 18 years in local government, and I've learned one thing. The way to bridge the huge gap between the theory of how you think things are going to work and how they're actually going to work is to actually implement them on task orientation. So you learn that there's little things like support aircraft are needed by the Marine Corps. I think the two challenges we have is one in Afghanistan and the other is Central America, of how do we use our aid to replace the drug economy and the lack of economy in certain parts of the world and be able to transition in and learn by doing and keep that flexibility, because the outcome is what matters, not the structure of the process. And I think that we need to be able to modify that process, and the only way to know if it's working or not is seeing, are you moving towards the outcome? And I think our problems right now in Afghanistan and in Latin America are reflective of the fact that we need to get more to the outcome base rather than just following a procedural. And right now, your argument is so compartmentized, there's no way to follow the ball because it bounces in too many different locations. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Our time is really winding down. We have a ceremony in Emancipation Hall that many members want to attend. So let us do this. We're going to have a subsequent hearing. I am going to have the staff send you a memo because I'd like to hear more about what we do in high threat environments. How do we have programs? What kind of programs? I'd like to know how do we work on the Peace Score with these programs and so on. But we're going to put in writing a memo to you. You can respond, and we'll include those in the record. We will have a follow-up hearing because I think we're just getting into the meat of the restructuring. And there's a tremendous need for restructuring, reorganizing, bringing, so that we don't duplicate so many of these efforts that we're trying to make. If we are going towards peace, if we're moving into that era, how do we do it? And so we will specifically ask you the questions, and you can write back. We'll make them a part of the record, and then we'll follow up and have a final hearing. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much for your testimony.